that is the subject matter of You Can't Kill Us All, is really, at that point, was a direct shot across the bow of militant straight edge. And the idea that in a music scene, you're going to physically harm or kill or threaten the life of somebody for singing a song.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, if you want to support the podcast, I have a Patreon. It's $1 a month over at patreon.com/thiswasthescene. You basically pay $1 a month just because you're listening to all these episodes for free, and that's what you get. So if you want to be awesome, then go check that out. Coalesce is an American metalcore band formed in Kansas City, Missouri in 1994. They are considered pioneers of mathcore and were known for its aggressive style of music and reckless live shows. The band broke up in 2010 and has performed 2 reunion shows since then, and you can catch them this year on Friday, October 4th at Furnace Fest. I've been wanting to get Sean on this podcast for a long time, and I just happened to message him his personal Instagram and got to him right away. I was messaging the band Instagram for so long and not getting a response, and I just messaged Sean, and he's like, yeah. So I was like, holy shit. So I don't want to have like a very lengthy intro, so I'm just going to jump into what we talk about. Getting attacked by dogs, Earth Crisis' aggressiveness, finding his voice, him messing with their album artwork, functioning on impatience, crews threatening his life, recording of 012 Revolution and Just Listening, how they broke up, reuniting with Jess on guitar, singing for Dillinger's Escape Plan. Shout out to my buddy Ziggy for letting me know that this happened so I could ask this question. Reuniting in 2005, playing Furnace Fest this year, and a ton more. Go check out the re-releases of their vinyl over at relapse.com. I got 3 copies myself, and it's pretty fucking great. They have like the marble vinyl that are different colors. It's fucking awesome. So go check it out and buy some. Lastly, if your marketing department has recently said, hey, we need a whiteboard animation or an explainer animation, then email me at mike@drive80.com. That's my full-time gig, and that's how I make a living, so I can keep doing this fucking podcast. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. I've put on my Instagram if anyone knows you, and I think someone may have, and then I was messaging the Instagram account. And then you guys just posted something before we connected, and I saw that you had a personal account. I was like, oh, maybe this will work. And then you immediately responded. I was like, holy shit, this is great.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty available. I don't like social media personally, but I started working in this other business, and I really needed social media to, learn the industry and what other people in the industry are doing. And you know how it is, dude. It's like next thing you know, you're posting just dumb shit when you're drinking at night. And you know what I mean? It doesn't take much to get sucked into it. So it's like I'm kind of an all or nothing person. And I didn't have one for years, and I was very happy. And then I had one for years, and I was very unhappy. And then now I'm kind of indifferent. So
what's the career that you're doing right now?
Well, I mean, I'm still in band merchandising and marketing for bands, but I started helping a skater with a skate brand. And skateboarding is it's just an enigma, like where the industry is at and stuff. So really just kind of understanding like what are like brands doing? Are they holding strong on their pricing? Are they going 50% off? Are they just slashing and burning and that type, just really boring shit like that. But like skateboarding is it's all over the place. It's such a big, you know what I mean? It's Olympics to a cult status, you know what I mean? Everything in between. So there's a lot of research that I needed to do.
I feel like if I was a skateboarder, I'd have so much fun because of social media. It's like I just remember back in the day, all the skate videos that came out, and then that would lead to like CKY, and they're doing skits, and then what's the one on is it Vice, or it's one of those channels where they like have a competition with the skateboarders and it's just the craziest shit. Have you seen this?
Yeah. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, I mean, it's, and my pal Dan from Escape Skateboarding and Second Nature Records, he sent me this thing this morning. He's like, well, I guess we're doing game shows now. And so that's kind of a new thing that's popped up to where it's kind of like Wipeout, but for skateboarders, and they create all this stuff. So it's very bizarre. And I think there's really a hunt for money, really, so that people can keep doing this. And He sent me this other story of a very well-off skateboarder who's saying, "Hey, last 3 years, I'm having troubles paying," and that was really shocking to see that from this young buck who is at the top of the game. So if you can't make money, how can a small startup make money? And to me, my opinion on this goes to music and everything else is if you're chasing money, whatever you're doing fucking sucks. It just is the way it is. And so to me, I mean, even though you have to fund a tour or you have to fund a drop or you have to fund all of this stuff, it's like when you start putting it from the perspective of like, this needs to make money, and then this skateboard or this record was literally designed and written by an actual dollar bill, not by the person with the creativity. So it's just, and what are you going to do? You still have to pay for the product. You still have to do this stuff. So it's like trying to find that balance is so hard. I'm lucky enough that even with the bands that I'm doing and stuff, it's money's really not a consideration because we're just older to some degree. We don't have to like start from scratch. There's still some goodwill that we kind of rely on, to kind of keep going a little bit. So anyone listening to this and is just like, yeah, but this is like, yeah, I know, I agree with you 100%. It's like, I'm definitely spoiled, but I put that time in and that's where I come from. But with skateboarding, I have not put my time in that industry. And so like just seeing how difficult it is, and it's way different.
Do you skate?
Me, yeah. I try to skate several times a week. I got in a really bad motorcycle accident right before the pandemic happened. I got attacked by a couple dogs on my dirt bike around the lake over here where I live, and I had a complete AC separation on my right shoulder, and took years and years and years and to heal to where I could even sleep on my side. And really, when you kind of are in that much pain and you can't move and you can't do those things, your brain starts thinking differently. My brain, like everyone else's, started thinking differently during the pandemic. And then also everybody I knew and loved started dying. The combination of those three things really just kind of turned into, it's like, I need to circle back around and be involved with the things that inspired me and the things that I love. And so that's really was what happened to me. I don't think anybody really came out of the pandemic the same. I'm sure everybody has a story of like a friend or a loved one that just didn't besides not coming out at all. But if they did come out, their brains just function differently, right? They think differently, whether they got into the hard conspiracy stuff or if they literally just completely abandoned who they were as a person and took up this other something totally random. Like I remember talking to this artist friend of mine, and he was working on all of these amazing art projects. And during the pandemic, he said, I threw every last one of them away. All I want to do is play softball. I was like, okay. So it's like, I think a lot of people had to stop and think of what made them happy and go back to that and really just like throw away any equity they had in something that they were doing and then just go for it. So same thing happened to me. That turned into music and skateboarding because I haven't really done anything, I think, in 12 or 14 years musically. I hid from it. I worked in the industry, but I didn't put much value on who I was as a singer or whatever my perceived talents were. And so I think after that fifth death, I was talking to my buddy Josh Barber, who I'm in a totally separate band with. And we'd been talking about doing music forever. And the conversation went like, hey, listen, let's do this or don't talk to me about it anymore. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to dream. I'm too old to dream. I'm ready to do things. So, and that just really kind of catapulted me back into it, really.
I love that you said about your voice. I think you have like one of the best voices. Like I like when I first heard you guys years ago, I was like, what is this? Because it was like I liked a lot of harder stuff back in the day when I heard you guys. I was like, I have never heard anything like this. And I think your voice fucking rocks. So I'm glad that you're getting back into it. I saw that you guys are playing Furnace Fest. Is that the first time you guys have? When was the last time you played before Furnace Fest coming up?
So the last time we played we played with Converge here in Lawrence in I think 2011. I don't remember if it was before the show or after the show, but our drummer Junior at the time, I remember just being like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to work on these other things, his career, et cetera. So that ended up just being our last show, not because it was our last show. It's just, we just didn't feel like playing again. So like, we're really not into nostalgia at all. And I know that's completely hypocritical because our first time back is at this kind of, this festival that's kind of known for nostalgia. But really, for us, it was practical and something to build off of. So fests are always like kind of difficult. I'm not a huge fan of fests. You know what I mean? I think that the best fest I've ever played in my entire life was Scion Fest with Harvey Milk. It was in Atlanta. I can't remember the name of the club, but they had like it was this huge old building, and they had three different stages, and they had like heaven, purgatory, and hell. And hell was like this little tiny room in the basement. It was like a real show, and it was great. And also, I guess by extension, like the fest was cool too, because it's less like a fest and it's more like all your favorite bands just take over the entire town of Gainesville. So really, it just came down to, it's like there was no like major planning or anything for the band. We get together every year, or every other year, and we just have dinner and just reminisce and just tell old stories, and every year we don't talk about playing again. But this year it was different for whatever reason. And then next thing I know, we're, flying out Nate's favorite drummer from New York City out, and he's trying out, and it's just one thing after another, and now we're just hitting the ground running. So the Furnace Fest I feel like was probably like if you're looking at it from like, from a strategic standpoint, it just makes sense because people will know we're back, and then we can build off. And there's also like a personal element of that too, that, my kids are now 14 to 20, something years old, 20 plus years old, and they don't understand Coalesce, but they're proud of their dad and the things he's accomplished. And they're always excited when they see that, I'm recognized in a local music scene or a heavy music scene and stuff. So like having the ability for my kids to go like see all of these other bands that they've only heard me tell stories about, and then also see us in that thing. So I think the personal angle of that to me is the most attractive, doing kind of like a fest again like this. But if we had our way, we'd be in like 500 crap rooms opening for new noise bands and our friends' bands from back in the day that are still doing amazing stuff. Obviously, a Cave-In, and our friends from Boston and that type of thing.
I think it'd be kind of cool. I don't know if your kids would listen to this interview, but I think just the fact of going over the whole history might be kind of fun for them to hear, to kind of educate them more on the band. I mean, I'm sure you've done like a bunch of interviews, and I'll probably ask similar questions and things like that, which I kind of led with, just warning.
I'll probably have different answers, and I'm always amazed when I read stuff, and I'm just like, not factual things, but just like my opinions on things have changed so drastically because I've been doing this for 30 years. So fair warning, if someone's read an answer that I've like, no, that's what Sean says. You can't trust what Sean says, because it's like, perspective changes so drastically over the year, and fresh understanding of the people involved and what they were going through and their struggles. So anyways, yeah.
Yeah. I think as you get older too, and you have become a dad, there's definitely a different perspective that you have where, I don't know, maybe certain things soften up, or maybe some things stay the same or get maybe a little bit harder because you're like in protective mode or something. Yeah.
Well, I have this saying that the 20s were for fighting. When you're in your 20s, that's for fighting. That's clearly where my kids are. As I'm older, yeah, you're right. It's like, I mean, when you see the same cycles happen, when you're fresh and new, you're like, oh, this is the end of the world. When you're older, it's like, no, I've seen that happen a million times, or at least a dozen times. It's the same with like fashion. My son will be like, Dad, we need to work on your fit. It's like, no, you don't understand. I've been wearing Levi's and flannels since I was like 8 years old. It's come and gone like 12 times, and it'll be back again. And it's like, I'm not wearing pillow skate shoes and baggy, the big baggy pants and stuff. I was like, I already did that. It's already coming back 3 times. So
yeah, it's wild to see all the Jinkos that are back. When I'm getting coffee, all these kids are like in their 20s and they're wearing Jinkos, and these big, like these girls are tiny and they're wearing XL shirts. And like, man, that you guys look like me when I was 17, and it's crazy to me. So to kind of go back, like, because you grew up in Kansas City, right?
Yeah. So yeah, Coalesce started in Kansas City for sure. Yeah, all of us were here.
So how'd you get involved in the scene there?
So I do say this all the time. Everything for me begins and ends with skateboarding. Me and Dan Askew from Second Nature Records, we grew up since we were kids. We both got into skateboarding together. And as we got older, we discovered all of these hardcore bands and skate videos. So like, Streets on Fire, and then all this, the 8th Street stuff. And so really it's like for us, music was, it was tied to skateboarding. I mean, they were like, that's where it came from. We used to make cassette copies of our skate videos because it never dawned on us that we could go to a music store and buy these CDs or cassettes, right? So we would just make our own, and a lot of times we didn't even know who the bands were. And I remember as a kid being so shocked the first time I saw Bad Brains. I was like, oh, I had no idea that this was like a reggae band. You know what I mean? We were so dumb. We had no clue. That was the lens that we saw music from. So as we got older, we started meeting other people who were involved in the music scene that maybe weren't skaters, but they were kind of like skate adjacent. Those guys were really into playing guitar and playing bass, right? And so then the worlds just kind of collided, and then the music started happening. So I got really into straight edge music, and then there was a local guy, Justin Wright. He was like the record collector and the tape trader, and he was into straight edge, and he could play guitar, and he knew people could play drums. And so, I didn't play shit, so I was the vocalist. I think they tried to get me to play bass once, and they maybe put all of maybe like 2 minutes of effort into showing me how to hold a string and didn't like it. And then they're like, all right, you're the singer. And so I just went all in on it. It was this band called Restrain. It was Justin's band, and we were just, what, 16, 17? So, we wrote these straight edge songs and played in my basement of my house and maybe played one VFW hall or something like that. And then while that was going on, actually, I'm probably getting ahead of you, but like as far as like how I got into it, yeah, it went from skateboarding, and then we ran into those people, and then it really was just kind of this perfect storm, right? Because it's like you have all these people with all this energy, and DIY was very real back then. You know what I mean? It's like you really truly had to book your own show. You had to go out and mow lawns to buy this equipment. It's like you had to work hard for it. It wasn't as at your fingertips as it became in the MySpace era. If you were out there playing, it's like you wanted it, right? And people paid more attention to that, I think.
I think that one thing, when you said that mowing lawns to pay for things, I'm remembering, because I came from a band. Like, the reason I do this podcast is I grew up in the Jersey scene in the late 90s playing and stuff like that. I think one thing we can give credit to is how many Guitar Center credit cards were given out to kids, and then how much debt we all got in because we're all buying like JCM 900 heads and like all these bass cabs and shit.
Yeah. No question, dude. Yeah, right? People had the most insane gear. I remember one time I went over to an early Coalesce rehearsal, and Jess had this, it must have been 8 foot tall Mesa Boogie set up. And like, it was so insane, but yeah, no, you're totally right. But that changed for us pretty, like through, like we discovered thrift stores pretty quick.
For equipment?
Yeah, for equipment. Pretty quick, yeah.
I never even would have thought of that. I was like, I just got to have something. I mean, I was like an Ibanez bass that was like, okay, it's like $200. I think I can afford that. And if it was like a couple grand, I was like, yeah, no way. Even now, if I look at something, it's a couple grand. I'm like, fuck that shit. That's too much. But you're the band starting, and then how do you get together with Coalesce? Did you meet, like, who from the band did you meet to start Coalesce?
Jess had this other band that we played with a lot. Oh God, he's gonna kick me for forgetting the name.
I got Wikipedia up, so I could probably.
It's like it was like a Manra, or it was a Hare Krishna band.
Yeah, right? It was a Krishna core band, Amara.
Yeah. So that was him, JJ Wilmoth, who's still our good buddy. He's at all of our shows. He played drums, and he played drums in Restrain. His brother, I can't remember who played bass. Maybe Stacy. It was the original. It was basically the Coalesce lineup minus Jim Red on drums. Yeah, so like we knew each other. Like we're in the scene. I don't remember us being super close, but I remember really liking him. Jess was always super unique. The dude he just doesn't think the same as other people. He does his own thing unapologetically. So it's like he's like that Apple campaign, Think Different. That really truly is Jess. I mean, he's his own person, and he's like influenced by very little. It's kind of refreshing to be around from a creative standpoint. So I left town. I went and lived in Syracuse for a couple months. I moved into 127 Harvard Place, which was across the street from Conviction Records, Justin Guavin or Guav. I lived with Ben from Earth Crisis for a bit. Yeah, so I was just out in Syracuse, just leaning into my vegan straight edge self, right? Yeah, so I was out there, and then it didn't work out for me. Completely did not understand how to live on my own. Came back home. to kind of reset, get a job, and kind of figure out what I'm doing with my life. And I just went to some show out in Lee Summit. The Ameriguys came up and they're like, "Hey, we're starting a new band. We want you to try it for vocals." I didn't have shit going on, and of course, it sounds fun, right? And I always liked what Jess was doing, and so.
And you're how old at this point?
Oh God. I mean, it's just out of high school, so 17, 18. Yeah, so like I went over there. It was in this area over in the park, this big, huge house. The drummer's, our father was like a lawyer and just had all these resources and this awesome rehearsal space. And they'd give me a demo tape and they said, "Here, come up with some ideas." And so the first song I demoed for them with my ideas was Harvest of Maturity. There's that part where it goes again, 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 and again. And like I remember Jess was just like that. He was hooked, and he just kind of fell on the ground laughing. And he was just like, he's like, "This is it. You're in. We want you to be our singer." That started to coalesce as people kind of knew it. However, at the time we were called Breach. We didn't know there was another Breach yet. That's what we were known as, but that's really kind of how it started.
I think Coalesce is the perfect name for the sound that you guys created. It just like it all works, like everything about it.
Well, and it was great, and we battled for the name. We had some really terrible names. This is the days of physically calling on a phone, a landline. It was just constant calls, the phone ringing all night, just saying, "How about this? How about?" And then finally he goes, "How about Coalesce?" And I was like, "Yep, that's it. That's the one." And we just went with it. I think the drummer wanted to name the band Womb, WOMB. And he was lobbying really, really, really hard for it. Jim Red did not like the name Coalesce, I remember. We just went for it.
So real quick, because you were roommates with the guy from Earth Crisis, just because you said that, were they as aggressive about being straight edge as everyone thought back then?
So this was 94, maybe 93. So this was before this was after All Out War and before the Firestorm 7-inch. And I think they had the Firestorm album. I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but they actually recorded that an album, Firestorm, that never saw the light of day at that time. I think maybe Victory's put it out since, but it was a highly circulated kind of like, I mean, it was a clout tape. Like if you had it, you were fucking cool. Kind of like that Quicksand album that was circulating around that never got released. So
wait, what?
Yeah, there's a Quicksand album. I can't remember. I think it's since been released, but basically there was kind of like a lo-fi Quicksand album, and it was of the time of Slip or right after Slip, and the songs still had that kind of that energy and that of nature. I'll try to look it up and send it to you.
Was that the one song that was on the Antimatter comp?
It might have been. So that guy was definitely in the cool circle. So I would assume that he had that. But Mike Dubin is where I got it from. Can you fucking believe that Steve from Cave-In it's how cool, how stoked.
I saw them. So I live in Raleigh, and I saw them. There's this little tiny place called Lincoln Theater here, and I saw them play end of last year, and I'm just like, because they can't be a 3-piece band. They need to have a second guitar player, and then having him come in and play that, it was the coolest thing, because he's got such stage presence, and he just shreds on guitar. I was just like, this is one of the best moments. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's so nuts. And that band is so important to me. Quicksand is, and just to like know somebody from my circles that's in it, it's so cool,
Totally.
Yeah, it's so bizarre.
So the Firestorm demo was going around, but you were living with them.
Yeah. And and there's this other band named Solstice that was less aggressive. Can't remember the name. It wasn't Lost Horizon. I think that was the club out there. But there was this little recording studio, and the entire Syracuse scene showed up. That poor engineer, dude. It just showed up while they're doing the songs and stuff, and it was pretty tight-knit and stuff. As far as fighting people on the street or whatever, no. But and definitely not Ben from Earth Crisis. I'm pretty sure someone told me, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but someone was telling me that he's doing speeches on safe veganism, and he's not Heartland at all in any way, shape, or form. He was such a fun, like, carefree dude. Like if you met him, and you didn't know he was in Earth Crisis, you would have never guessed he was in Earth Crisis at all. And he's the guy with like kind of the big hair, the really crazy like stage presence and stuff in those early times. And yeah, he was really interesting. The other guys were reserved, but I mean they were just normal dudes, you know. Carl was intense for sure, no question about it. He loved to talk about veganism all the time. That was real. But as far as they definitely were involved with kind of like hardline in the early days of their career, from what I could understand from seeing the flyers and what people were telling me around town. But like, it wasn't anything like aggressive, kind of like the Cruise.
There was just so much going on back then. It was just like this whole mythos about them. You're like, this band came to town to be scared.
Yeah, I don't feel like they were scary, but like they weren't bullshit. I mean, they were serious about what they were writing. For sure. No question about it. I would say like the Courage Cruise and the Monster Cruise and all that type of stuff that came later, like that stuff was legitimately scary. I felt like the Earth Crisis guys were, from my experience, my very limited short experience with them, was that they were just very earnest and they were serious, and it meant something to them, and it wasn't a joke to them.
So to jump into when you got that first practice and you like hit that part of that song and Jess is laughing, how did you find your voice? Because I'm sure you've heard this a lot of times, like your speaking voice and your singing voice are polar opposites. I can hear that.
Well, yeah. So really I think it just comes down to practice, right?
Were you striving to get that sound, or did it just come out and you're like, oh?
It just came out. So, yeah. So like really, I mean, when you listen to the early 7-inches and stuff, I'm damaging my throat 100%. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs as a young kid only knows how to scream. Of course, blow your vocals out, can't do long screams and everything. And then just as we were just doing heavy practicing, touring, all of that stuff, that kind of resistance and understanding what that kind of false chord feels like in the back of your throat, I just kind of discovered it. And then I leaned into it. It's really interesting today because there's Melissa Cross and there's, you know, and I'm working with a really, really talented girl to increase my flexibility and all this stuff, and there's like a whole industry of teaching people how to scream.
Oh yeah, Melissa Cross. Yeah, she's the one who taught everyone in the metal scene, like
the breathing techniques and all that stuff. So yeah, that didn't exist back then. I would always hear messages like, "Hey, this guy wants to talk to you about how you get your voice shown." I didn't know how to tell anybody. I was like, I don't know, but I would, I was using my abdominal wall and the diaphragm correctly. I was breathing right. That's how I was able to get like 20-second screams that sounded like real guttural screams. And I just kind of blundered into it. And then I think later people also learned how to do it. They figured it out how to teach other people how to do it. Fast forward to 3 years ago when I wanted to start getting in shape and do this again, I had to go to those people to be like, well, shit, I don't remember how this worked. It doesn't feel right. It feels tight. All these things don't feel good. I actually had to rely on these people who did how to do it. And it took about a year to get in shape to be able to get my voice back. I didn't touch it for again, I think it was 12 or 14 years. I never raised my voice, no screaming whatsoever. So
Do you have so if you're in the car driving and a song comes on that you like and you're singing to it, like, do you have a singing voice that's opposite of your Coalesce voice?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And this band that I'm doing with my buddy Josh, I mean, it's like 30% singing and then screaming. So it's like singing to me is, and I sing on aux.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Being in question and stuff like that. But it's like I'm doing some, acoustic songs and I'm doing all this other stuff, just to be creative, just being able to be creative.
I guess just sorry to cut you off. I guess the reason I asked that is because I'm thinking when you're first starting off singing, you have your singing voice and it's almost like you could have gone with that, but you chose the voice that you sing with in that. It's like, did you feel more comfort in the voice that you chose than the one you could have gone with?
Oh, do I feel more comfortable with the screaming voice?
Yeah, like when you first, like with the band, did you think like this makes more sense because of the sound that's coming out of these guys, or I feel more comfortable singing like this instead of my other voice?
So for me, I put together what I felt matched the music, and the same on these other projects I'm doing. It's like there's parts that I don't go full tilt because the part doesn't call for it. But in general, for Coalesce, I mean, it's angular and it's off time. It's got weird signatures and structures and stuff. Like to me, the vocal had to be equally aggressive and move in those ways too. And so like to me that wasn't singing.
So your first show you guys play, what was that like? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's on the cover of our first 7-inch. So we tried to do this show and it got canceled. It might have been a 108 show or something, and then maybe they canceled or they couldn't make it or Van broke something. And everybody was there and bummed. And then Jess was like, fuck it, let's go back to our rehearsal studio. And so we did. And so we told all our friends, they all went out in Overland Park and went out in the basement. And then we played our 5 or 6 songs that we had. Our first show was a basement show right there in Overland Park. And so, yeah, that's exactly how it happened. Yeah, I'm like wearing a Beretta shirt. I'm wearing a Beretta. Jess is wearing, I don't know, a tunic or something. It's like this weird striped brown thing.
Yeah.
And I think he was full blown Hare Krishna at the time. And then I think Jim Red, and I think everybody's in it. But yeah, that was our first show. That's a photo of our first show.
How long did it take you guys to start gaining some popularity around town?
Because there wasn't a lot of hardcore going on. You know, really our friends were like the Get Up Kids and
That's right.
And Boys Life and all of these really badass bands. And so, I mean, there was no hardcore scene. So we, you know, I think we're maybe kind of like the token heavy band and some of these things here and there. I don't remember us. I don't feel like we were ever really, I mean, there's only so many people in the heavy music scene, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I mean, they were at the basements. They were around because they were our friends. And it wasn't until we went on tour with Bloodlet and 108 that's when momentum started for us. Before then, you know, we would go to Wichita and that was fun. There's this great band called Vent out there. They actually had a record on Hide Your Head and they were our friends and stuff. But like, I mean, it wasn't like we really had a following. And I tell my kids this all the time. I was like, look, let's get realistic. It's just like, I've played more empty shows than I've played packed shows, guys. So it's like, I don't take this for granted. You know, it's like, I know what it's like to play to 3 people walking up, you know, to the stage. So you know, and that's kind of what it was like.
Real quick, if you're looking for an explainer video or someone to do motion graphics for your company, check out my company, drive80.com, and you can email me at mike@drive80.com for more info. That's all I got to say. So now back to the interview. Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot of bands like you guys at that time. I mean, when the early 2000s come around, then it was like Screamo became a thing, and then it's like Warped Tour, and you had to scream in the song, and it became just fucking watered down and shitty. But back then, you were like fighting for, okay, we're competing with ska right now and like Fat Records bands.
So yeah, and you know, and really it's like, I mean, the things that I think that were inspiring him was like the Jesus Lizard and Metallica, and it came out like Coalesce, right? Throw my voice on it and it becomes something totally different. But it's now that you mention it, my memory got jogged a little bit there. I remember the first time that we actually had a good amount of people locally was when we came back through Kansas City on that first tour we did with Bloodlet. We were like, holy shit, where did all these people come from? That was the first time. But, you know, we've played good shows since then. But and like I said, we've played some really terrible shows. We played a festival late in our career and no one was there. And I was just like, holy shit, like, like what happened? You just can't take it for granted, right? Every show needs to be promoted to its fullest, no matter what.
When you guys went on tour, was that when like Give Them Rope was out, or was this before that?
No, we had our 7-inch out, right? And then we had just got this deal with Earache Records and we recorded 002. Earache placed us on that tour. They got 108 to agree to throw this, you know, baby band on their tour for $50 a night. And that's what we did. And so that was all from help from Earache Records, you know, Matt Young and Gordon Conrad and the team out there. I mean, and that was it. I mean, and that was, you know, it's crazy to think that like that tour was so hard and difficult, but like also it's just the one that we remember the most. I mean, it was difficult because I didn't get along with 108. We had no money. We were fighting in the band. I mean, those stories have been circulating forever, you know. So I mean, look, 20s is for fighting, right? And we weren't even 20 yet, so we were extra fighting. And it's just who we were. We were just like kids, you know what I mean? And took my dad's van out, and you know, and then the wheel fell off and caught on fire. And we couldn't go, and then we figured it. I mean, it was just chaos, you know. We just didn't have any financial support, and that $50 a day, it just barely fed us, you know, and we were just tired, hungry. But the shows were like the best shows ever. Just a comfortable tour doesn't always make for the best tour, but it's weird to think that I've been on so many tours since, and there's some that I love the most. Like I love touring with Harvey Milk. I fucking love those guys. I love to just watch their music every night. I love touring with Converge. I love touring with Cave In, just because they're great people and I love their music. We have the most stories and the most lessons learned definitely from that 95 tour.
So when I'm looking at the record, the cover art for 002, the first record, it almost looks like whoever designed that was trying to make like a Victory Records looking kind of hardcore visual for the cover, right?
Oh, the earache one with the yellow?
Well, the first one, like On Their Behalf, first record you guys put out, the 7-inch you guys put out.
Yeah, totally.
So like that, like with you guys playing live, that it looks like it's like portraying you as a hardcore band. I think from like this is just me, just taking because like I'm into design and shit like that. But I feel like from the second record on, it's like visually, it also figured out like you guys connected with sound wise, you guys vocally, musically, you guys connected, and then visually, I think from that second record on, it's like you were established as that look just carried with you the whole time, and it represented you guys like outward facing.
Well, that's nice to hear because I feel like we're still trying to figure that out, but
Really? I feel it's so there.
totally do. So like, and here's the proof for that is that during the 2000s when we were repressing and all that stuff, it's like not the band, but me personally was constantly fucking with the art. We have multiple covers of 012. We have multiple covers of Give Them Rope. We have multiple, you know what I mean? It's like really that falls on me. I should not have had that much freedom. Also, it's like, I call it unlucasing our band. And that's really what we wanted to do with Relapse. And that's when I was talking to Drew over at Relapse. I was like, dude, I just want 012 to have the original Dan Henkart. I want it to be the tab and like it just needs to go back to exactly what the first CD was. Functioning Impatience, luckily, was never messed with because it was just so visually cool when it first came out, anyways. And then we've just put Give Them Rope back. So yeah, so just putting them back the way they to me was the most important thing. But yeah, Jim Red, the drummer at the time, he was solely responsible for that cool painting. There's a local artist. I think the title of the art was called Witch's Brew. And it's just a little itty bitty tiny corner of the art. If you saw the actual art, it actually has this cauldron with like little squiggles. You wouldn't recognize it. I haven't been able to find a real picture of it since, but yeah, that artist was nice enough to license that out. Yeah, and then when we had to redo it, we didn't have access to the art. And so 002 Safe Place 10-inch, the art's similar to that. Aaron Turner actually painted that. So we came to him and we're like, hey, can you help us just make this look similar so that we can just have the art and move forward? And he did that. He actually did two versions of that. He did a burnt orange and sienna type version of that, and then he did the yellow. We used the yellow, but the burnt orange one, I don't think anyone's ever seen. It's hanging in my mom's house. She wanted it, and so it's hanging out there. But yeah, I mean, like each one, it's like I always wanted my hand in it. The first one that I really kind of said, hey, I don't want this responsibility anymore was on Ox. And we brought in like Don Clark from Invisible Creature. He was in training for Utopia and a Demon Hunter. He was in the early days of a Demon Hunter. And he's a really famous graphic designer now. And so he agreed to do that. And I basically just shot out all my ideas and then he put it together. And that's how Ox came out. And so that one, it's one of my favorite because I think it's one of the most easily recognizable ones. But yeah, outside of that, it really was just trying to match like what the vibe to the music was.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it every time. Just from an outside perspective, I've always thought that.
Okay, well, cool. I'm glad to hear it.
What do you draw from for that visually? Like, do you also design, or do you just like pay attention to art where you're like, I think I have a good say in this?
Well, really, for me, because I'm not an artist, I like most things in my life, I just trust my gut. When I put the lyrics together for 012, I just had this vision of this dual-sided baby. With Ox, it was the same kind of thing. However, it went through the lens of a professional. For Functioning on Impatience, same thing. It went through the lens of a professional. One of the guys from the band Grade put that together for us. and really give them rope with that photo and what we used with Johnny and stuff. There was a version of the record that came out originally that was supposed to have this female figure with this burlap over them and stuff. And there was an alternate cover that I was able to do that vision. This really great artist, Matt, he goes by Shiny Pliers. He put that together. At the end of the day, it's like when a record comes out and it debuts a certain way, that's how fans want to remember that record. They don't want the new cover, right? So, like, for instance, I know like Paramore just changed the cover of one of their like famous albums, and everybody's giving them shit for it. And the reason is because it's like you're erasing a memory, and you're and like that art is associated with that music. So that's why we went back to it. But, I mean, Give Them Rope, that one did not turn out how we wanted to do. That was kind of like, well, this is a plan B. I guess it looks okay. The EPs were always fun to do. The same artist who did Functioning did the Get Up Kids split, I believe. And then I took a stab at the Napalm Death one. Yeah, each one really, it's just, right? It's just following your gut of like, this is what it is,
No, I fucking love it. I think I remember too, and I'm jumping ahead for a second here, but Functioning on Patience, didn't it have like a clear, like when you opened it, the rib cage separated from the back?
Yeah, and it still does. The reissues are the same. So the new reissues are on Relapse. Second Nature licensed them out because Second Nature isn't really active right now. They kept all of the vellum and everything, and that's really based off of those old books in science class with the frog, and you open it, you can see the thing. And that was, kind of like the concept of what we wanted to do with the albums. I wanted depth to it because I thought that the art just looked so cool. So I picked out those pieces from Gray's Anatomy book. Yeah, and then the artist took my ideas and put it together and then added his own flair to it. Obviously, it's like he created where the text went and everything. But the idea was always that we wanted this kind of layered rib cage.
What's the break between 96 and 97? On Wikipedia, there's just a break in the colors of the band members. Did you guys go on a hiatus for like a hot second?
Yeah, so that tour, at the end of the tour, broke up. I did not get along with Jim Red at all. He tried to replace me with a new singer. They told me when the rehearsal time was, and then I called them to confirm, and they were ghosting me. So I knew something was up because, we just weren't getting along. And so I just went over there. I caught him cheating on me with trying out a new singer. And it was James DeWeese. What a weird story, right? So James DeWeese was on there, and he saw me come in. He goes, "Oh, hey." And then he peaced out and he was gone. And then Jess goes, "All right, we're broke up. Bye." And I've never talked to Jess about it, but I think that it was just a lot. We're very young, and it was just a lot was going on. And so we ended up breaking up. And then we took those 2 years off, right? Or a year or so off. Jess got married. Everybody was kind of feeling each other out about like doing the band again. And then I remember Jim Red being there, and he's like, "Fuck that. I don't want to be in this band." I think the idea was like, well, let's go talk to that guy that was replacing Sean, because I think he was a drummer too. And so we did. Or Jess or Stacy did, and then they talked to him, and he came in for a tryout, and we practiced in this house that Jess was kind of squatting in. He thought he was paying rent, but I think he was squatting in it, and unbeknownst to him. And so the same issue. It's like we had these songs and these really hard parts, and Deweese just nailed it, and he was just in the band. So now, effectively, it almost seems like James Deweese was meant to be in the band because he was trying to replace me by way of Jim Red, but then how it ended up is that he replaced Jim Red by way of Jess. To me, it's just a testament of like how small the scene in Kansas City was at the time. It was like 4 people we're working with, right? Yeah, so that happened, and then that's when we started cruising on the next record, right?
So was that what record does that lead to?
So I believe that leads to
Give Them Rope?
Give Them Rope, yeah. All of these ideas that Jess had, all of these fast, hard, heavy, ideas, just a really like claustrophobic record, right? So I think that he really was excited to have a drummer who could keep up, right? And so he was just pedal to the metal, just going. And so that is where that happened. And so then we go on another tour. We get signed by Relapse off of the work that we did off of Give Them Rope and these other things, right? Meet with Matt Jacobson, who owned the label at the time, and then got the record deal. We went on tour immediately because that was always our goal, was to get on. Like, tour to us was like, tour was important, and then it was records.
Actually, real quick, like touring though, you had such a bad tour with 108, and then I don't know what kept you guys being like, oh, it could be better, or like I don't know, like what made you like touring?
Well, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't because of 108. I mean, it's like we just. I think that tour was bad because you ever, like, when you're like a kid and you spend the night at your friend's house and you get fucking sick of them at midnight and you want to go home.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't do that on tour.
that's such a great analogy.
It's like that. It's really what it felt like. It's like I just fucking break from. It's like Jim's breath would get on my fucking nerves. Fucking Rob Fish's bully behavior would get on my fucking nerve. Like, and I certainly got on their nerves. So it's like I'm not easy to be around with. I fully admit I'm an asshole. So it's like it was just that. So I think that when we were young, we just didn't understand how to navigate that. I also don't think that we appreciated the amount of freedom and creativity that we had at our fingertips. I feel like when you're a young kid, you're always searching for comfort. This couch isn't comfortable. This food doesn't taste good, that type of thing. And really what we should have done was shut the fuck up and be like, I'm eating on a beach. I'm sleeping on a couch in California. And I'm not speaking for the other guys, but just from my point of view, it's like that constant search for comfort, and you will not find that on tour. Yeah, that's all I really mean by that. And the lack of money. So we go from $50 to $150. We're making three times as much money, boys. It's like, this has got to be easier. And so Relapse fronted us money for a van, and I did my best to find something that would work for us. And it just, and the tour was going fine. We had great shows on the East Coast, and then we get to the West Coast, and we just historically have never done well West. And so we spent, we made all this money. And when I say made all this money, I mean like $2,000, right? And then we hit to the West Coast and we lose it immediately, paying for things. Our shows suck. Promoters don't understand us, or whatever, whatever reason, or people just didn't like us there. That's a fair assessment too. And so we just lost it all. And then the fucking van breaks down, and then it's just like everything comes to a head. And at that point, that's when everyone's just like, okay, this clearly isn't working. Everybody's mad again. I think at this point, after Give Them Rope and all of this stuff, Jess was ready to start his career and get married. He's ready to start his life. As little as Coalesce did back then, I mean, it was like it would take up a lot of headspace. I mean, it was a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of fighting, to make those things happen. So I think that at that point, it was just like, this is done. And then no one really talked to each other after that, because we just were moving on with other stuff. But the problem is that we took all that money from Relapse. Matt Jacobson called and was like, where's this fucking record? And I was like, oh yeah, we broke up. He's like, yeah, I don't think so. Let's see this fucking record. We gave you money. You give me my money back. It was probably only $8,000 or something like that, but it might as well have been $8 million to us. I just reached out to the band and, hey, this is what's going on. And my recollection of it, and Jess's may be very different, but my recollection of it was nobody really needed to be convinced too hard to do this record. The guys are creative. They love to write. Relapse is going to pay for it. And I remember them just being like, fuck it, we'll do it, which is a pretty common thing for us to say. And then we started working on 0-2.
Wait, this is all after Functioning on Impatience?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, did I miss anything? Yeah, Functioning was... Do you want to go back to Functioning? I think we went over that.
Oh, yeah, I want to talk about that fucking record. What I have in front of me right now, I have Discogs open, I've got like YouTube, Spotify, so I'm jumping back and forth just to kind of keep timelines going, and I got Wikipedia open where it's got the color scheme and everything. So what I'm seeing is there's this blue line when Stacy's out, and then Nathan comes in as the bassist finally.
Okay, so let's go. So where are you at so I can look at that?
So basically, so Give 'Em Rope, that's out. And then you guys are touring, and then what I want to start with is, because I have a question, two questions, or a couple questions, Functioning on Patience. When did you guys record Functioning? Was that when Nathan was in, or was Stacy still in the band?
That was Nathan, yeah. Really what happened with that is that, and the reason that it's called Functioning on Patience is that Johnny Dudek, who's since passed away, he put out Give Them Rope, right? But he was doing the sensible thing and he was doing the really smart thing, which was lead time, marketing, all of these things that we were just like, you have the record. Why don't we have it next week? And we just didn't understand that we just didn't get it. And so we were like, fuck it, let's just put out another record. So before we were writing Functioning before Give Them Rope even came out. And that's why it was titled, we were just talking about ourselves. It's like, we're just too impatient. It's like we have to move. We weren't looking at our band like a career or anything, or we didn't have to pace our socials or, none of that stuff existed. You just put out a record and you fucking played hard. And so like, that's how we were approaching it. And so I don't really remember the story of why Stacy was not in the band. I always remember it being very cordial and him just like being like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. And then Nellis was around us, always helping us, doing stuff, roadie and all that stuff. It's crazy to think he was like, to us, we always thought of him as like a little kid, even though it was probably only like a 2-year difference, right? But like, when you're in high school from a sophomore to a senior, right? That's kind of what it felt like. And then, but he's crazy talented, man. And then he just jumped right in. And then he's been one of the main driving forces of the band ever since. So that's how that happened. And then I remember us having that at one of the crazy fests. We just kind of dropped this record and people were just like, what the fuck? Like Give Them Rope, like literally just came out. How many records are you doing? And really it was because of the length of time that it took for Johnny to get it out that we just blasted it. We just couldn't sit still. We got a new bassist. And when Jess says go, you go. You don't throttle Jess. You miss the moment with them. And that's how his creative process works always. And it's how it always will. If Jess comes to you and says, hey, I'm writing a record, there's no saying, hey, no, we need to do this. You're writing a record. Whatever you had planned before is out the window or on hold.
It almost sounds like the sound of the band kind of represents the internal workings of the band at that time.
Yeah, I feel like of all of our records, that one feels like 4 different things playing at once, if that makes sense.
Which one, Functioning or Give Them Rope?
Functioning. Give Them Rope to me is like, it's a cohesive, it's a wall of noise. But in Functioning, it's got more space, right? And then Nate's bass lines are so different than Stacy's, and that brought this totally new idea to the band. And I don't know if those guys would agree with this, but it's like, I think that's probably the beginning of Coalesce thinking of itself as a drum and bass band, and that is how we think of ourselves now. It's drum and bass, and then me and Jess are on top of it. It's not a riff band, even though 012 had some really great riffs. That's just how we approach what we do, and that's how we think of it. So I think that Functioning is definitely where that started, but I don't know if Nate and Jess would agree with that.
So I had a question about You Can't Kill Us All, because it just starts off with you singing with nothing else. When you're recording that whole part, like, do you have a click track going on? Like, how did you do that part?
Yeah. It's just a click track to make sure that it lined up. Yeah, that part's weird, right? Because I don't know if a lot of bands have done that since or before.
It's so jarring. It's like when you don't, at this time, like anyone listening is, the majority of people I think listen to this podcast are in their mid 30s to almost like 50s, right? And I think a lot of people can remember that time. So when I first heard that, I'm listening to like Less Than Jake and NoFX and Face to Face, and then this comes out and that starts off with that, and I was like, oh man, I'm not ready for that. But what is this? Because I've never heard this before. It's such a powerful way to start that fucking record.
Thanks. So to me, the whole concept of that song and that approach, it was to basically create a sense of vulnerability within Rage, right? So you're screaming, but when you're screaming alone, it's weird, right? That's why a lot of people have a hard time learning to scream, is because there's this sense of embarrassment when you're screaming by yourself. It's just kind of silly. It feels silly maybe. So to just lean into it, I felt like would just really kind of set the tone, and especially the subject matter of the song too, right? This idea that at this point the crews were in full swing, and we were getting shows canceled because the promoters were being harassed at work by these big fucking bullies, and they're telling us Sean Ingram's going to be killed if he ever comes back here. And I mean, all this stuff that people don't really, I don't think, remember. if you go on Reddit forums and stuff, you'll hear it dismissed.
Wait, why was that happening?
So yeah, so I became the poster boy of the anti straight edge person, even though I was not anti straight edge, I was anti violence. It started with the song Harvest of Maturity, which was about a 18-year-old young man trying to discover, what has he gotten himself into with this kind of straight edge thing, and it just rubbed straight edge the wrong way, big time. We fought that for a long time, and that probably added to the tension inside of the band because it wasn't like we could just show up to a show and be like, hey, what's up? It's like I had to show up to show and fucking scope it out, make sure I'm not getting fucking jumped. And then when the cruise happened, it was like violence organized, right? And around this time is when I don't know if you've ever seen this video, but Rolanda was this TV show. It was kind of like, Jerry Springer or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And she did a thing on straight edge and gangs and stuff like that. And like all of those crews were up there, just fronting and, looking hard and sending the message that they're not to be fucked with. And so really my songs, although not intentionally designed to provoke them, provoked them. Yeah, it was scary, dude. So like there were a couple years that during that bit, I had to carry a couple $1 million insurance on my life because we didn't know. I think some of those guys are still around and maybe realize. I feel like those are the ones that are kind of like the apologists, like on Reddit forums and stuff, when people kind of like anonymously talk about it. And I've seen this several times where people will be like, oh, anybody who says that it was dangerous they just didn't understand. It was just a joke or whatever. And it's like, well, look, this motherfucker doesn't know it's a joke. I've got like kids and a wife who doesn't want me out there anyways. I'm struggling to get what I mean? And this is real life. And so that is the subject matter of You Can't Kill Us All is really at that point was a direct shot across the bow of militant straight edge. And the idea that in a music scene, you're going to physically harm or kill or threaten the life of somebody for singing a song. I would say that through the 2000, that was a big deal, and of course I got a big mouth and they would push me and I'd push back. And we had people screaming Monster Crew or Clear Crew, whatever the crew was, during our sets, heckling us. And I've been confronted several times. Miraculously didn't get in a fight any of those times. It just was, I just have a real bad taste in my mouth to straight edge because of what it turned into. And then I just recently listened to this amazing oral history of Minor Threat with Ian MacKay, as I'm understanding his name is pronounced now. So I'm listening to this and he's talking about how the song Straight Edge. And it's just so crazy because he's telling the story about how the guys in the band actually made him go back and clarify straight edge in the song Out of Step. It's like, look, I'm telling you, he fucking knew it. They knew it. They knew what they were doing could create this thing. And they actually tried to actively do it. It's almost like looking at it like a sci-fi movie where somebody went back in time and is like, hey, what you need to do is clarify this is not a set of rules. This is just your own personal opinion. But it still happened anyways. To me, that's just so amazing because it's like it just took on this kind of pseudo religion thing, and I ate it up too. And for me, it was based in getting into drugs. My father was like incredibly abusive at the time. I was looking for brotherhood, all these things that like straight edge back then was about. So that's how I got into it and stuff. But I say this often. It's like as I have kids now that are like, 14 to 20 plus. It's just like, this is like a year and a half of my life, right? It's just a blip in my, nearly 50-year existence. It's like the audacity of a group of people to hold me accountable for something that, that a 18 or 17-year-old, whatever, 16-year-old says or does. It's like, I don't know if you have kids or not, but like, have you ever heard something stupid come out of a 16-year-old's mouth? It's pretty
Yeah.
It's just so common. The stage that was put on and the Harvest of Maturity song was really an attempt to wrestle with that and be like, why am I like this? like, well, why do I need this? And then by extension, the song My Love for Extremes. And it's like there's an ongoing theme to do that. And as I'm approaching 50, the thing that I understand about myself is I can peg other people really fucking, like, I know what they're up to. I know what they want as I work with, the psychology of sales and all that stuff, right? But I'm the last person that I understand. Like, I don't know why I do things sometimes. It takes me a minute. And so the subject matter in Coalesce, like lyric writing, would touch on that a lot. But it is largely gone from my life, this whole straight edge thing. And thank God. And good riddance.
Did you quote unquote break the edge like around that time when you did
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
was that purely out of defiance or was that like out of curiosity?
No, it was just kind of like, when you're doing something for other people and you don't know why, right? So maybe a little defiance. I can pass a drug test today. I'm not some sloppy alcoholic drug user. I just don't fucking tell me what to do, right? And so and there's a lot of that. And I also just fell out of love with the kind of violent nature that it kind of went into. I still love Earth Crisis. Don't get me wrong. Those early records are so amazing to me. They still hit hard, but like just from a like I can look at it with more perspective, right? That's great. This is who they are. It's not who I am, but I really appreciate what they're doing. And it's just more reasonable to me to be like that. But just being involved with all of it, I just needed to make a break. Not because I wanted to do drugs. It's just because I just wanted to be me.
This is it's kind of breaking from this for a second, but it's still this whole cruise thing. Did you ever hear that Ray Cappo? I don't know if you listen to Rogan at all, or everyone has their thing, but Ray Cappo was on. I forget his new name now, but he's telling the story about when Shelter was playing the show, and this crew shows up and beats the shit out of him and like a bunch of people. Have you ever heard of this story?
I do my best to avoid any Hare Krishna musician in any way, shape, or form. I have no clue. I don't follow any of it, so I haven't heard it, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it just sounds similar, like this whole world, because I was not aware of it at all until I heard that, and then I interviewed this guy Casey from Iodine Records, and he was telling me about this whole scene where like one of the guys from this like Boston scene, there was this huge crew like that. I don't know, this whole like gang like that, and then they were involved in the scene. They'd beat the shit out of people, and this one guy, he's on like the Mayans show or something. I don't know. It's just this whole world I was very unaware of, and you're like the second or third. You're like the third time I've heard about this, so it's just wild to me.
It's definitely scary. I think actually the singer Snapcase got caught up in that and got jumped by one of those things. Yeah, it's just I don't think there's any veil between hardcore singers and the fans, right? Because we were just all kids up there. But I do think that there was a point in time when beating up bands was some form of clout. And I think that a lot of people saw it in the mainstream with that one band who kind of like went up and punched Glenn Danzig and then started making T-shirts about it and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, fuck that. It's just so who wants to be in like what musician wants to be involved with that? It's just like and I'm getting, my blood sugar is getting high just thinking about it and talking about it with you right now because it's like because this is I'm remembering why we probably heard those stories about Shelter because Jess probably heard those stories and then he's looking at me and he's just like, what the fuck, dude? Sean, shut the fuck up. Like, why are we? Let's not rock the boat. What I'm trying to say is I'm remembering the tension. I remember that feeling as we're kind of talking about it.
Yeah, I don't want to have you like feel like uncomfortable either. So I don't want to stay in
No,
this
no, no,
thing.
no, no, not triggered or but I guess what I'm trying to say is like just even talking about it, it's like it kind of brings it back, and I remember that. Yeah, it just fucking sucked so bad. It was just everything about it sucked. Like just the fights and stuff, over an ideology. I did myself no favors, and I'm the first to admit it. You Can't Kill Us All was a direct shot over the bow towards that, but it was an attempt to be understood, not to further escalate things. But
So like there's three things there. I'm just going to touch on like one. I personally understand that like I'm a pretty easygoing guy, I give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes my brain just if I get annoyed by something, I can't not say something and it'll just be aggressive. Like Like you were saying, I don't know where it comes from. I feel the same thing. Like sometimes I'm like, why am I so mad about that? I'm usually pretty happy. And then but there's this inner defiance sometimes, like, fuck that shit. And it just pushes past everything and just comes out. The other is, this whole podcast is about documenting this time period. And it's like, this was the scene. It's like, it's a direct thing of, this is before all that bullshit happened with the fashion shows and all that stuff. And it's like this is when things were good, but it's so wild to see that other side of the lens of where there was a lot of shit that was going on that wasn't really good. And it's wild to see that because I was not involved in that. I'm in a pop punk band singing about girls and breakups and shit. And then we're not getting up on stage and people are like, we're going to kick his fucking ass for not like appreciating his girlfriend who's cheating on or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that. It's crazy to see like this is going on. So it's interesting to have other people see that. Like, yeah, like for us it was great, but there was this really bad shit happening at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's still happening in some ways now, but yeah, I guess my final thought on that is like, I am shocked to just see how people play that down like it never happened, or if somebody calls that out, it's like, oh, you're overreacting, those were just knuckleheads or whatever. It's just like, look, the internet didn't exist in the form that it did now. There was no researching. It was word of mouth, right? And really, we did a lot of shows where girls were promoters, and if you got some bullies showing up bullying a girl promoter, her demeanor on the phone is she's really upset, and that makes us upset. And then I tell Jess, and that makes him upset, and then all of a sudden we're upset. It's like, this is the biggest thing. So maybe it was just some dumb shit. I mean, it's fair to say it was a dumb shit, but maybe it was just like some dumb shit that wasn't going to do anything. That intimidation, was enough, and it went through the telephone chain, and it just got bigger. It's like, how are you going to blame the band who's being told that directly from a promoter that if you show up, these guys are going to kill you? Dude, there was crazy shit going on in Salt Lake City, right? There's the story of the kid who got killed with a broadsword, or fights going bad and people being paralyzed. And I just call bullshit on anybody who tries to downplay how scary and dangerous that stuff was at the time.
I will say though that You Can't Kill Us All, it's almost like that song, to go back to your point of just being its pure vulnerability. It's almost like that song in general is because you're making such a statement. I think the fact that you sang it in the beginning without any music behind it, it almost makes people stop and really pay attention to, right? So it's like you're in a room, you're on stage, you're singing this, but when you're starting with that and there's no band playing, everyone's looking at the whole room is probably like silent to hear what that is. So I feel like it even draws more attention to that shut the fuck up and listen to this kind of aspect of the song.
Yeah, I think that's how we largely saw it, and it's our firestorm. I mean, this is the song. This is the song we have to play last because all the mics are broken from the fans and stuff. So in that sense, I mean, I don't think about the song a lot, but I guess if there's one song that's our song that the fans want, I'm glad it's this one.
I know I have a couple actually, because Discuss for Details, just the beginning, that guitar riff through that song, I feel is almost like the melody of the song in a sense. It's like the chorus of the song just the whole time. I don't know. Like I just had to point that out because I think that song also is fucking it just rips.
Yeah, that's one of our we love to start with that, and that's always on our list. That's always on our playlist.
So that record's out, you guys are touring, and then you said that 012, that happens when you guys are trying to break up and Relapse is like, oh no, you have money. Okay, so let's get into that because there's a couple songs. Well, actually, I want to talk about the first song just because I fucking love that. Like, that's on my gym mix. That song is so fucking awesome. But yeah, sorry, that's not like a meathead there.
The What Happens song, right? Here, let me look it up, make sure I know my own band here.
Yeah, so What Happens on the Road.
Yeah.
So you guys are told like, no, we need this record. So then that's how that record comes about.
It is. So really, because we took money, and it's just not who we are to end something poorly or take money and not give back or all that stuff. So like to us, it was important to pay it back. And like I said earlier, it's like I don't think it took much convincing. Now there really is kind of a lore to this record that has kind of grown over time from interviews and perceptions, is that we all went in individually and, we all went in recorded our parts individually, and we were so mad at each other and nobody could go. That's actually not true. I mean, we were at odds with each other, but I went to the rehearsals, I got the tapes, we communicated. If anything, the only thing that we didn't do was I didn't check lyrics by anybody. That part was just like, my part's done, so you do your part, then we'll do the art. I don't remember anybody even really, having any feedback or anything on the art. To me, that's where the record was different. But this kind of idea that we hated each other, we were sneering at each other while we were doing it, that's not true. We were adults and we were getting along. But we knew that we didn't want to do this moving forward. I mean, it's also a testament of these guys, when they get the opportunity to be creative, they're always going to take it, even in not ideal scenario. You're building something knowing that you're not going to tour it, knowing that you're not going to support it. And then we find out later, after this record comes out, that it's a lot of people's favorite record, right? I think it's the one that's in the Decibel Hall of Fame. It's really kind of a weird story, but we cared about the record, and we still do care about the record, and we play half the songs on the record. Would we have approached things differently? Probably not much differently. Probably some things would have been different.
What happens on the road always comes home. Like, so the time when I heard this, a buddy of mine showed it to me. He was like, "You got to check this fucking song out," and my mind was blown just because there's like two. I mean, the beginning starts off hard, and then it like goes in this crazy breakdown, and then it goes in the real breakdown. I was like, how many directions is this fucking thing going? I don't know if you remember just how you guys came up with just all the parts in that. I don't know. I kind of want to geek out technically on this, if you remember any of that.
Well, it's definitely a Jess question, but like he approaches everything on how it feels to play. I'm almost guarantee you it's because he wanted to transition a breakdown into an even harder breakdown. Like, yeah, when he's writing things, I mean, obviously it's what it sounds like, right? Because it's an audio recording, but I would say more so it's what it feels like. Is that song fun to play? Does it just feel rad when you're doing it? And I think that helped. That's like his compass where he goes. So I would say that was most definitely what he was thinking, in that part, and also just the length of the record, right? It's real short. It's 23 minutes. At that point, it was short and sweet, just hard and out. That's how he wanted to feel it.
This stands out to me just because I have it open on Spotify and just looking at the song titles compared to the other ones, they're a little bit longer. Is that just coincidence, or was there something to that?
This is the part that I'm kind of alluding to that maybe would have been different if I didn't think this was the last thing. I mean, I thought this was the last thing that I would ever do, and I wanted to tell the story, and I probably was a little bit too literal as far as sharing those types of things. Whereas, like, I probably could have gotten a song title in 2 words. It's like, to me, it's like, I was like, no, it's just going to be more of like a more just literal story, actually. So, I mean, we have our shorthand names for these songs.
So I was going to say.
So we call them, we're not like, let's say what happens on the road always comes, you know what I mean? It's like we have our own shorthand, on our set list. So, but yeah, I mean, to me, that's just one of the things that I would have done different.
Is there anything about the lyrics of this whole record that stand out to you, like what you were writing about?
Well, I mean, really, I was wrestling with how much like building, right? And how much effort I put in this band and how quickly it can be taken away if one member didn't want to do it, right? And that leads into 2002. So I didn't fucking like it. I don't like being told what to do. I worked on this band too. And I know lots of bands have had to deal with that. A core member of the band not wanting to do something, and then another core member of the band wanting to do something, right? I think Dead Guy has the most famous story. They split into 2 bands. One kept the name Dead Guy. So yeah, it just fucking sucked, right? And this is when I'm just out of my 20s and I'm still fighting. It just didn't sit right with me. I wanted to keep going. So I didn't know if that was ever possible. So the way that I approached this was like, this is my swan song as this guy who was in this band. These are all the things that I want to say. I'm upset that I missed my kid's first words for a fucking show in front of 2 people. I'm upset that I let myself do all of these things. Why didn't I put family first? That's really like a lot of the themes that I was thinking about and wanting to write.
So then what leads to you guys breaking up and then taking a break and then you guys coming back with a different lineup? Well,
Yeah, O2, right?
yeah, I mean it's a different lineup, but you bring Stacy back, you get Corey to come on, and I read interviews about that years ago too. But like, how do you guys break up? And then we'll talk about 2002.
Well, the breakup was always already happened, right? So the 0 and 2 just kind of happened after that. And so it's like we had already broken up when we wrote and did that. And that's the whole point. That's the part that I'm talking about is the narrative on that's probably harsher than the reality of it. It is crazy to think that a band is totally broken up, has no intention of getting back together, and then like writes and records this album. But that's what we did. But we did it fine. So that record comes out, and then I think largely I start a business at this point. I'm working on my professional career. 2 years later, it's like, holy shit, people want to see Coalesce. Because this record had done really well. I don't know if it's because we didn't do anything to support the record. I don't know what the answer to that is. At that point, I think Stacy wanted to play again. I know James DeWeese definitely wanted to play again. We asked Nate. Nate declined if Jess wasn't involved, and then Jess was. I mean, I wasn't speaking with Jess at that point. Really, I jokingly refer to this as the Judas era because this to me. I feel like this is the story I think a lot of bands should pay attention to if trying to move on without a core member of their band. My thought was, well, we got 3 of the core members, and then we have Corey, who's really accomplished guitar player. He plays great. He knows these songs, and he loves the band, etc. I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's do this. Let's go for it. And so we met a real long time about it, and then we decided to do it. And so at this point, James was working with the Get Up Kids and maybe My Chemical Romance. I think he was in both bands at this point, or maybe not My Chem yet.
No, I think My Chem came later.
Yeah, okay. James is clued in with, his booking agent, and because it'd been a while and people wanted to see Coalesce, they were actually paying money that we could go. I think that aspect made things kind of suck. We also took Corey's other band as the opener, Esoteric. That kind of built-in opener should probably be a warning to other bands. That creates issues, all sorts of issues when you have just a built-in band and the booking agents. It's like, hey, you need to drop this band. Like, do you guys want to, right? Booking agents are trying to help your career along. You know what I mean? So we had that issue. It wasn't the same. Wasn't the same band. This was an incredible learning experience for me to really just reflect on what is important. The talks were that we recorded a couple songs, while we were there. And actually one of our top songs on Apple and Spotify is from this era. It's just, I feel like if I could go back and do it again, I would not. If I knew now, or if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have done it. But I also was an asshole, right? And I wanted what I wanted, and Jess wasn't going to tell me that I can't do this band that I put all my blood, sweat, and tears and money and all this stuff into. So that's really the root of it, and I think that's a terrible foundation to start with. But I think it's one that I'm sure you could probably name half a dozen bands that have made the same error, right?
It was like 2005, 2006, Crazy Fest put out a DVD of performances from the 2002 show that they did, or 2001, 2000. I think was it Crazy Fest? No, it was Michigan Fest. That was it. And so I saw it at a record store and I bought it just because it said you guys were on it. And I'm watching you guys play, and I'm watching Corey, who I didn't know wasn't just the time, like play. Then I read an interview later when you guys got together and did Ox that you were talking pretty much the same way, like, yeah, I wouldn't have done it and stuff. And then Jess is there talking. But there was one thing where you're like, yeah, like Corey kind of had some big shoes to fill because Jess's stage presence is not like he just gets lost when he plays, and it's wild to say.
Yeah, dude, I didn't understand that. I just didn't understand this about Jess back then. Jess is not performing. Corey was performing because he's a performer.
Like, Jess goes inward, man.
He goes inward. He's doing his own thing. He has no fucking clue who's on stage. The only time you catch a spark in his eye is he wants to make sure that he knows the next song starts, right? That he's not playing the wrong song. So, and that's it. So if we have a set list, then there are sets where I never see Jess. I feel Jess. I didn't understand that about him. And that's what's, I think, so unique about him is that's how he writes, that's how he plays. He has no interest in being a frontman, famous, well known. As a matter of fact, if he could play in a mask, he would. He just wants to fucking play. He wants to play his guitar live with that energy, and that's all he wants to do. So it just is different. Corey's a great guitarist, and he can go nuts. He's great, but he's not Jess. So it is different. And I feel like if that lineup continued to go, at some point, Corey's stage presence would have to break, because he would have to be, I'm tired of pretending to be Jess, right? Whether he was doing that or not, just the idea that's like, hey, I need to put my own mark on this because I need to be me. You don't tell me what to do. I need to be me. So yeah, it's real wild, dude. It's definitely something that I get real fucking cringy if this shit ever gets brought up in the tour van. I'll tell you that.
Really?
Dude. It's like, cause it's like, guys, I fucked up. I fucked up. But that leads into 2005, right? A totally different I learned my lesson. I learned who I am. I learned who Jess was. And I learned what Coalesce was and what it should be and what should be protected. And really, it's hard to admit that in a lot of ways, Coalesce really needed to be protected from me. Stop fucking with the art, Sean. Stop fucking with the lineup when Jess doesn't want to play, Sean. Those things I think were really hard to just come to an understanding on, for sure. But I would say that when Coalesce restarted in 2005, that's when Coalesce started, in my opinion. That is the modern Coalesce.
A couple things there. When you're on stage in 2002, and like prior to that, you're playing on these shows for years with Jess and the other guys on stage, and so you don't get to, like, you can't see the forest of the trees, where you get that feeling. You know what it feels like when you guys get on stage. You create this thing, you feel it, you know it, and then you don't really recognize that until you get on stage again and you have a different lineup, and then you feel that difference. Is that what kind of happened as part of the thing that showed you, like, oh, I can't fuck with this thing. It's got to be the full members.
Yeah, so I didn't even have to play again. I knew at the end of 2002, I was like, I fucked up. We fucked up. This is, I don't want to say a Coalesce cover band, because it was three quarters of the original members. The Jess-sized hole in that band is so enormous that it just ceases to be the band, really. I don't know if any other member it's like that, but to me, I just rectify it by just saying, look, this is Jess's band and I get to be a part of it. It really, truly.
I would say, though, if they did that, just to, not devil's advocate, but just to be creative with this, like, I think if they had, like, in 2001, you got up and it did a set with Dillinger for Crazy Fest.
Yeah.
Because that was that because with Dimitri, did he just leave and you filled in?
I think there's differences of opinion, but I was just basically asked to do that show, and then they asked me to do a New York show, but 9/11 happened, so it got canceled.
Jesus. Okay, I did not know that. So I guess my thought is, in that instance, that works because it's like almost like, hey, we got a special guest, right? If Coalesce did the 2002 thing and it was reversed and they had someone else come in and sing and try to be you, it would have kind of hit the same way, like with Jess not being there. You guys are integral parts, like the parts of the band, so you can't really take yourself out of it and not say it's like also not your band.
Well, and yeah, and from the listener's point of view, for sure, right? There's bands that have successfully replaced their vocalists. I think it's weird but I think as more bands since the MySpace era. I was reading something to where, like, I like the second singer of Flyleaf better than the third. I think it's becomes more, as bands become more business oriented, I guess, like the way to put it, you know what I mean? To where they're just like, hey, everybody's replaceable. Yeah, the singer's hard. But the thing that Dillinger's in right now, where I haven't talked to Ben other than about these New York shows that, we're not able to play that he's doing. But like my understanding from him, from reading his interviews, just like everybody else, is like him and Greg don't get along, right? And then the narrative is that, well, Greg was never a member of the band, right? Like he was a hired gun, right? I mean, it's what Ben said. So like, I just don't think that it's easy for like a fan to be like that because they don't care about your LLC setup, right? Like they just care that they love the records that Greg was on and they want you to make up and get him in the band. Just like Every Time I Die fans are just like,
Oh my God, yeah.
please get back together, guys.
Dude, I feel the same fucking way. Sorry, go ahead.
It's, and I went and saw them at one of their final shows, and the tension was palpable, big time,
Yeah.
and it just sucks. But somebody wrote this really funny comment on one of their posts. He goes, "Look, I fight with my brothers too. Knock it off."
Love that.
And I'm sure there's a lot more going on. I'm trying to make light of it, but
Yeah.
I think fans don't give a shit about your business fucking structure. But if they associate a singer with a record, they want that singer. So I would say I'm not the heart and soul to the degree that like Jess is, right? Because when I sing on other records and I do other things, it's not Coalesce, it's just me. But I understand what you're saying, that definitely you throw a new singer on there and it doesn't sound like the same band, They would have found the same problem, just in a different degree, probably.
Yeah. Actually, and just I have to just touch on it real fast. I mentioned the Dillinger thing. I saw some video of that, and how was that playing that show?
It was a lot of fucking work. And who let me wear white shorts on stage?
That doesn't come clearly through the video, so I think you're safe.
I don't know what the fuck was. Yeah, I definitely needed a stylist back then. No, dude. So they flew me out. I had to learn the songs, and it was a long set. For some reason, they weren't headlining. They should have headlined. For some reason, I think Boy Sets Fire headlined. The show that Dillinger had put together was fucking nuts, dude. They were blowing fire and shit, and like all this. It was insane, dude. Totally dangerous and unhinged, like in the best possible way. And so I was doing my best to learn those songs. I was at my peak performance as far as like being able to sing and carry out screams, and my voice was in great shape at the time. They fly me out 2 weeks early, and they have this really, really, really heavy practice schedule to where we're just going for hours every day because these guys they're a serious band. I mean, these guys are a real band. They're a pro band. And so they wanted me to be pro. And so they made sure that, I was up to snuff. The very first, I get into the studio. It was this really nice recording studio of some sort. I get on the mic, and I think they started with the 40-something% burnt. Dude, the BPM is easily twice as fast as it is on the CD. And I was like, yo, this is way faster than the CD. And they just looked at me with a straight face, and they go, yeah, that's how we play. Keep up. Like there was no slow down, you know what I mean? So like I had to fucking step up. So I would say of all the things I've done in my life, being able to hit every fucking word and every, beat and everything on that show is one of the top ones because it was an incredible feat for me. Coalesce is noisy, loose. We always make the joke that like Coalesce is, blood and scars, not computer chip guitars, right? Because it's just like a feeling. These dudes are computer chip guitars. They're fucking precise. And I mean, they're so talented, right? And this is when they had that incredible drummer with them.
Oh yeah, fuck. He went on to do Co-ed in Cambria. Chris Penny.
Yeah, really, really nice guy. So yeah, dude, it was just an incredible amount of effort. I was kind of shocked at how much effort it was, really.
Did you have to cut any corners with like your vocals at all, just to like, because your voice is deeper, and it's like I feel like that it works better when the melody's slower than where they are, and then like that voice is high pitched. So it's like, how did you get to match that where it worked?
Dude, I fucking hammered the piece into the hole. Like I made it. I mean, it was just blunt force trauma. And just constant rehearsing, staying at the bassist house all morning while they worked, and then rehearse all night. I mean, it was an incredible amount of work on my end. Yeah, I mean, those guys are incredibly talented, and I feel like any singer who can keep up, Godspeed. That's fucking hard work. So I don't understand how Dimitri's going to do the Greg stuff, or if they're only playing old stuff, because Greg added this completely different element of vocalization and harmony and melody and all this other stuff, right? And so, and over that noise and stuff, not noise, but the noisy guitar and stuff. Yeah, it was a lot, dude.
What'd you take from that into when you guys get back together in 2005 and you do a live show? Like, what elements from that did you keep?
Well, none at all. I mean, if that was a job, I mean, I probably just wasn't a good fit. Like, they really needed like a high pitched screamer. I think Jake Bannon probably would have been a better choice than me, honestly. He can do that high pitched bark. He's really fucking energetic and stuff like that. And just like you said, you're right. It's like my voice, its balls are like when I can get into it and then I can carry out the scream and I can have that emotion to it. Like doing the short bark, I don't sound like anything special like that. What I took from it is that's why I wanted to do the band again in '02. I mean, it got me fucking hyped. 9/11 happened. Fucking world was ending. I was like, fuck it, let's go. So that. But as far as like 2005, I didn't take any of that. I can't think of any aspect that I took with me. It more than anything, I think it was just this kind of like really cool thing those guys let me do. And when I'm working with people at my employment and they're wearing a Dillinger skate paint, and I'm like, hey, did you know I sang for the band once? They never believe me. It's just this weird thing that just kind of happened.
So how does, like, when you guys did like your recording, your writing for Ox, like did you guys just go back to what it was, or it was like a different process?
Yeah, so I feel like it was definitely a different process. So we hold up. I feel like this band gets easier and easier as technology catches up with our shortcomings, right? I just made this observation the other night, telling my wife, I was like, you know what? If we would have had text chains like we have now, like so much shit would have been fixed and done because we are on it all the time, whether it's just making fun of each other or getting business done, or whatever, How we used to do it in the past is just would literally send cassettes in the mail. That's how we did it. Everybody got a cassette, borrowed a cassette, make a copy of the cassette, listen to the things, and then we have to hammer it out in person. Got a little bit easier with Ox because we're, now digital's happening and we're able to kind of send things back and forth. And then we're a little older, so we have little resources. And, Junior is a drum teacher and he has a drum clinic in downtown Lee Summit, Missouri. We hole up in there all winter. The writing process is still semi-similar, but now we have all these other things that kind of get some of the barriers out of the way to where we can get to the meat of the matter much quicker. Whether that's just being like, oh shit, why did we never think of having a whiteboard on the wall to get through these songs, to just kind of like low-hanging fruit stuff that we just never had access to, So like that really made it easier. And unbeknownst to us, this was the last time we would get to work with Ed Rose because he's retired from engineering. To me, I feel like the Ox writing experience of every record we've ever made, I feel like it was the most changes maybe, right? Hey, actually, I don't like the way this feels with this. Let's try it this way. Whereas like, I think in the earlier stuff, it's maybe not as complex, so it didn't need all that. But like Ox was like really weird, dude. We added this whole new element of Americana to it that we hadn't heard anybody do before. So we had no idea how to make it. We had no idea if the chain gang thing made sense. We had no idea if any of this stuff would make sense. So that there's a lot more trial and error to it. I would say it's the record we're most proud of for sure, all of us.
When you guys are communicating for the first time in so long, were you kind of nervous to say something that, like, were you almost like walking on glass with each other in the beginning?
No, I don't think so. I think that's what's so cool about dudes, right? In general, they cannot see each other for 4 years and just pick right back up, right? And that's largely what happened this year too. So I feel like really the I guess the thing that we're missing from this conversation is that after '02, when we got back in '05, it was the same thing. Hey, I'm just wants to be creative, right? And we're like, hey, let's give it a shot. And we wrote the 7-inch Son of Man, and just wanted to write a record or wanted to write some songs with as little distortion as possible. He wanted the aggressiveness of the riff to see if that and the aggressiveness of my vocals could still make an aggressive song. So when you listen to that 7-inch, the distortion is like minimal. I mean, it's really, he's just trying to write riffs in such a way that That is what makes it aggressive. You didn't want to hide behind distortion. That was like our first thing, like, this is cool. Let's give it a try. At that point, this is where I am in the band, have largely understood our roles and truly now understand like what the band is and who the players in the band are, right? And so I stand back. I don't push them to record. I don't push them to tour. All these things that were causing issues in the back, as I'm trying to will things into existence, I'm not doing that. And it works way better. People are happy. Nobody has a horse and a dog in a fight, right? They're just like, they're all on the same team. We're all in the same canoe, paddling the same way. That largely is why that was the longest span of our band. That stint with Junior was the longest active period of the band.
Yeah, even just visually, if you go on Wikipedia, you look at the left side, it's all broken up and choppy, and the right side is just smooth line four ways, like across the board.
Totally. And a lot of that really just comes down to me getting out of the way, my own way, and then also those dudes being allowed to be creative and to play off of each other's strengths, and just having the resources, like just minimal resources, like just a place to rehearse or a guitar to play. It's nobody's struggling to like keep their power on anymore. It's just little easier. So that I feel like was instrumental in just letting the creativity of Ox just come out. Even in the song Wild Ox Moan, I know I'm in the band and I don't really have the luxury of, I don't have the luxury or the context of like what a listener would listen to. But when I listened to it for the first time after a long time, I was just like, that probably took a lot of balls to start out with this completely bizarre song and then just have this weird back into it, right? It's like, it just, and we play it live like that too. Like we don't cut the front end. It's cool because I guess we weren't scared of it, right? Because there was no money writing on it. And I say that a lot. It's like when you have to do something for money, it dictates what you do. And this was just a record we wrote, and we didn't have any restrictions or responsibilities or anything like that. So we were allowed to just be as creative as we wanted. And that's the type of stuff that we got to do. And so, like, to me, I feel like that was just like the perfect writing experience. And that's why it's our favorite one.
Did you guys try to get James to play when you guys got back together, or was that not even in the conversation?
No, it wasn't in the conversation. At this point, James is
Reggie, Get Up Kids.
Get Up Kids, My Chemical Romance. Yeah. So I was doing flying gigs for Reggie when My Chemical Romance was opening for him. And that's how those two met, is My Chem was the opener for Reggie on several tours.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Great guys. Really cool dudes. It's fucking mind-blowing that they're the biggest emo band in the universe.
Yeah, I know.
Like, because, like, dude, they were such cool dudes and down to earth, and they were like, they would just hang out. They were just normal kids. So it's crazy. So I would fly in. I would do like these. He called them the Hungry Bear, and it was just fun. He'd fly me to L.A. or New York, and I would put on this bear costume, and I would scream, "Let's get it on!" and I'd hype up the crowd and all. Just fun stuff, just goofy shit. So we've always stayed close with. I've always stayed pretty close with James. I've lost touch with him, since he was kicked out of the Get Up Kids. Every once in a while he'll text me and tell me what he's doing, and I'll text back, but I don't hear back. It's a one-way street.
So I have to say though, Plot Against My Love, right? So when I look back at like Function on Impatience and I look at like 012, there's hits in there. What Happens on the Road, that's a hit to me. You Can't Kill Us All is a hit. Discuss for Details is a hit. So when Ox starts off and I hear Plot Against My Love, and I was like, this reminds me of the parts of those songs that I love, where it just blew my mind. I was like, where the fuck are they taking me with this song? I was just like, it was blown away when I heard that song.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. That just wrote that as the opener, and he was just like, I want to go he's like, I just want to go fucking fast. He goes, I just want to come out so hard and so fast. So, and that was our attempt to do that, because we knew we were doing all this other stuff too, right? To me, the biggest, like my favorite song off that is The Purveyor. And then by extension on Ox EP would be Through Sparrows. I feel like those two songs, from my perspective as somebody who is in the band and has been in the band forever, is like those encompass everything I always wanted to do in the band. It's like they're interesting, they're not too fast, And the story, I got to tell the story I wanted to say without any weird parts that I don't like years later. Because I'm sure anybody who's been in a band for a long time has some songs they're like, God, why did I fucking write that? It's like, what are these conservative lyrics? What was I thinking? And it's like that type of thing, So
I mean, the breakdown of that is just so aggressive and just like there's this attitude to it that I love. But with the part where you like freak the fuck out on the vocals, where you just go like ballistically fast, that part was just like holy shit. I just thought that was fucking, I don't know. I just thought that was great. Like, did you kind of like lose yourself a little bit when that part happened in the recording?
Well, I mean, the plot against my love is the subject matter is like, I mean, it's something I've struggled with until just recently, but like, I struggled with this for years and years and years, is to be involved in some kind of spiritual group so that my kids have some kind of spirituality in their life. But like every single time I got involved in some church, it was just fucking horseshit every fucking time. And so that's really what this is about, is like the church is the plot against my love, like going to a church, them breaking you is what that is. And so like, to me, I was all ready to some songs, just the subject matter, it's like, it'll get me pissed and I'll love it and I'll go for it. So that rapid fire part though, it's like, I mean, if I could, I would have made it faster.
Wow.
I bet Dimitri could have done it, or Jake or whatever, but like I was trying to, but like that part's impossible to pull off live, so it takes a lot of practice and stuff. So but yeah, no, it's one of my favorites for sure. I love the title. I love how that starts out.
Yeah, yeah, like when I got that record, I started with that. I was like, oh shit, these guys have not lost it. They actually went to like a next level with this record. So I just had to mention that. Like I rarely pull out songs, but these have been such intricate parts of like, I have them I have a main playlist that I've had through the years, and I like take songs out and put them in, but that's been there. And then I have like this gym mix, which I said before, and I put these like really aggressive, like, Every Time I Die is in there, and like Under Oath, and then I have that song in there, and it just like when it comes up, I'm like just fucking fired up.
Workout mix.
Yeah. It sounds like such a meathead, but fuck it. So basically, Ox comes out, and then like 3 years later, basically, Junior's like, I don't want to do this anymore. So were you guys like touring a little bit more? Because I got that video that you guys put out when I think that's where I heard the interview where you were talking about the 2002 thing, and then Jess, and then you're like, we wanted to play, Junior came in, and you're like, we wanted to play a live show to just show him what this thing is like, just so he get like used to it or something like that.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that's I don't remember the interview or the context, but that sounds about right, because Junior, each drummer is so different, and they bring so much different, like Jeff now, I mean, he's not a double bass player, right? So we're figuring new ways that are comfortable for him that make the songs unique. Same with Junior, he had different ideas. So I'm sure that's very true, and I probably referenced that Dillinger Escape Plan story too, where it's like we want to make sure that we play at the same speed we do on the stuff that he's learning. But we toured heavily with Junior. That we finally got to go to Europe for the first time ever, and that was great. One of my favorite tours ever was with Junior. We got to open for Harvey Milk. That was incredible. That, like, seeing that band every night is so cool. We got to do tours with Converge, when we were more grown up and could appreciate our relationship instead of like being competitive or whatever, Yeah, I mean, it's like really like the bulk of our touring history is with Junior, and the best shows we played were with Junior.
So why did he? So he decides that he doesn't want to do anymore in 2012, and that's when you guys have taken a hiatus up until now.
Yeah, we just took a hiatus. He just said, I don't want to do this. We just put a pin in it for a decade or so. Really is what happened. I mean, it's like a pretty boring story, but like, he's working on his career. He had, I believe, 2 children during that time. Moved to Nashville, and then I believe he's moved back since. I mean, regrettably, I'm not super in contact with him. I mean, everyone loves Junior. He just didn't want to do it. Didn't want to tour. Wanted to focus on his life. I mean, really similar to what Jess wanted to do back in 98 and 99. just a different time for junior and stuff. So once that happened, once we got back together to eat, Nellis and Jess both love the guys in Small Brown Bike. I mean, they're just buddies. And Jeff is a great hang, and he's really talented, and he makes so much sense for the band, you know, for this kind of new thing. And so it was just crazy organic. We just flew him out, and then that was it.
So what's like on the horizon for you guys outside of Furnace Fest?
We'll probably play some shows, and we are just have no clue what we're doing. We're just gonna play it by ear, and hopefully something new comes out of it. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. What we won't be doing is we're not going to be going on like a nostalgic tour for sure. Furnace Fest is great, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But like when the inevitable 90s Band Fest comes up, we won't be on it. When the inevitable whatever type of like look back, it's like I think for us, I think the trajectory we want for this, you know, since we understand what a gift it is we want to play with young creative bands, right? And just really be inspired by them, and have that inspire us to do more and to write more, or whatever that looks like. And I think understanding ourselves more now and seeing that is what really makes that the most important focus for us. I think that bands who rely on nostalgia, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just that's not what we want to do. We have so much respect for Converge and Cave In that they are always, I mean, they're as old as us, maybe older, some of them, but they're not thought of as old bands because they're constantly creative. So like that to me is really how I want our band to be. It's like I just have no interest in nostalgia at all. Jess doesn't either. And we certainly, when we play these old songs, want to write new ones. What that looks like, who knows? But that's kind of where our heads are at.
Was it a hard sell to get you guys on Furnace Fest?
I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe, I don't know. I mean, everybody had their own opinions. And it really is nothing against Furnace Fest. It really just comes down to we're a small stage band. I think that people have an idea of what we are, and when they see it, they're either repulsed by it, or they're like, oh, I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. Like I thought I knew what Coalesce was. I didn't realize he'd be puking and rolling in his whatever. It happens. You know, he's never done that. But like, you know what I mean? It's just like,
I did hear his story though. Sorry to cut you off, but like I did see Jess in an interview say that he would like, how do I say this? Just start like fondling himself, I guess, on stage during the show. Is that true?
It tracks. If he said it, it probably happened.
It's wild.
But I think that's completely in line with what this is to him, right? It's inside. So I don't think that's probably something he would continue to do. You know, I feel like there's probably some illegality to that in a public place, but that people do all sorts of wild shit in the moment, right? It only seems goofy and weird when you like dissect it later. You know, like in a conversation like this or in a magazine or whatever. But Jess is not Gigi Allen, but like imagine somebody having a conversation about defecating, picking it up, cutting your penis off, paying a girl to piss in your mouth. It just sounds so fucking weird when you talk about it, but when you see it, you're like, what the fuck? This is the punkest fucking shit I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, it's just weird. It's like just the forum that it's in and stuff.
Do you think that the stage you guys are going to be playing on is pretty gigantic? Like, do you think something's going to take you over to where you're going to be like, not prove a point, but something, because, you know, you have this, like to be earlier when you were like, you know, something just takes me over and I can't stop saying what's coming out of my mouth. Do you think like stage presence wise, like there's some energy there that's going to maybe exist in being in that big of a room where it almost feels like it's you versus them, or do you feel like it's going to be all of us together?
Sure. So I don't really know. So I every bad stage experience I've ever had has been on a big stage, because it's just not who we are. I think that towards the end of Ox, we got more comfortable with it. And since then, you know, my buddy Josh Barber, who's a producer, and I play in a band with a different band with him, and you know, he was really helpful, being like, hey, Sean, this is how you overcome that. He goes, you just focus on this triangle, and he's like giving tips and stuff like that. My hope is this. My hope is that I hope that we can be perceived as what we are, which is we're playing for each other and other people witness it, right? The kind of hardcore, I don't think, I mean, we do, sometimes I do like mic calls, things like that, but like, I think in general, Coalesce's performance is an event and then you witness it, right? We're not standing on stage and listen, motherfucker, blah, 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 like how, kind of the hardcore thing, right? So that's just not who we are. We just play our songs and then that energy is kind of focused towards us. But I don't know. Now I'm dissecting something that is just a feeling and it's just an event. And I don't know if what I'm saying is even true or not. But like, my hope is that it's just, people see and perceive it as like a real Coalesce show. And I think it's been so long. And I don't think my kids even understand this. They're like, I'm going to stage dive and I'm going to do this. I was like, oh, you actually don't understand our music, right? It's like, this is mine and this is Jess's and Nate's and Jeff's and like, this is ours and we do it. And then you get to see it or you don't. It's just how our band is. And that's probably why we haven't been as successful financially or sales wise or live. Who knows? I don't know all those answers because I'm just in the moment too. I don't spend a lot of time, I guess, thinking about it. I know the songs are going to be tight as fuck because we put a lot of effort into it. And I know that the vocals are going to be great because we've moved over to in-ears for me so that I can do better. I've been training for years. I'm in peak shape. So I would appreciate it if everybody stopped sending me that Hard Times article that says straight edge band show ruined after singer loses voice after 20 seconds. I get that at least 3 times a day from random people. It's like, dude, I'll be okay. But yeah, no, I mean, to me, I feel like the biggest difference here is that like our preparation for us. I mean, it's just like anything when you're older, right? When you go to the gym, when you do anything, you just have to prep more. You can't show up hungover with one shoe on like you used to. You need to be a little bit more deliberate. So for me, that's my hearing and understanding my voice better and understanding that people want to hear a Coalesce set sound like Coalesce. They don't want to hear garbled mess.
I'm so on the fence of buying a ticket to go to Furnace Fest. The only reason, honestly, like when I saw that you guys were playing, I was like, I have to go this year. It's just, I don't really like, I'm not going to not go somewhere because I don't like flying, but like I just, out of all these things come up and I was like, if there was way more bands on here to pay the price, I was like, are you guys going to do I know I'm kind of like going this far. Are you guys going to do anything else besides this?
Are you in New Jersey?
I used to be. I live in North Carolina now.
North Carolina? Okay.
Yeah. Like I went to Fest a couple of years ago, right in 2001 when 2020 they couldn't do it. So 2021, me and my buddy were like, we're going to go to this. And it was cool. It was they capped it. They didn't sell as many tickets because they wanted people to feel safe. And it was fun, but like 3 days of a festival, and I'm about to turn 45 in May, and it's like the shit just really fucking really just gets, it just beats you down if you just go hard. But if I'm just looking through the list now, and I was like, I'd love to see Drug Church. They're really good.
Oh yeah, they're awesome, dude.
Under Oath, but they're on Sunday. I'm not going to stay up till fucking 11 o'clock on Sunday to see that shit.
The Mind Force, I'm hoping they're on a Friday because we're playing on Friday. So I'm hoping Mind Force is on Friday. Pretty sure Snapcase is on Saturday. I'd love to see those guys. Those are great guys. And then, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of really young bands on there too, which is super cool. I love that.
Yeah, Shai Halud's on there too.
Yeah.
Cool, man. All right, so before I ask the last 2 questions, is there a story that you've always wanted to tell that you've never told before that you'd like to tell now?
Oh, with Coalesce?
Yeah.
Oh.
Doesn't have to be incriminating. It could just be something fun. It could be some crazy story. It could be something light. People have just had different styles of telling this.
Yeah, I'll share a story of something that I've done. There was this Revelation Records book. I don't remember what it's called, but there's a book about hardcore, and it's basically from different points of view of people. It's got like 108 on the cover. And do you know what book I'm talking about?
I'm gonna Google it right now as you're saying this.
Burning Fight. I think it's called Burning Fight. In my safe right now, I have a Burning Fight book that I have annotated or I'm probably using that word wrong, but like I have basically added, a lot of stories that they're touching on there that people didn't feel comfortable telling the whole story for, and added that, and that's in the will for my kids to understand me and this band. I guess that's the only kind of weird thing that I have with Coalesce.
Wait, so I'm confused by that. You added a story to that, or
I with a pen, I went through all these stories, and legacy is really weird, right? And so, and I've really been confronted with it a lot lately. It's that there are different jump points where legacy goes back to. I did this really fun podcast with this other podcast called Vocal Distortion. These guys are really great, and they were basically telling the story of 012 based off of what information was out there. The story that they told was definitely the story of the information that was out there, but it wasn't the real story. I think what's so interesting about it is that bands largely that are our age have really done a good job of curating their legacy. Converge for fucking sure, because they never stopped. I mean, they're the black flag of the modern era, right? And so same with Cave In, and the same with Dillinger, and the same with Now Botch, right? They always did good. But for us, we did not do good. Our records went out of press. Stories went unchallenged if they were inaccurate, and then those stories grow and grow and grow. And so when we see them again, it's like they don't really resemble the reality of what the situation is. This is an old concept. People, you hear famous people talk about this all the time. It happens to unfamous people too, like us. So to me, I don't know if I care so much to combat that, or I don't feel necessary to go back and fix that or correct that. I think that doing cool podcasts like yours or theirs or some new interview, all of that old stuff kind of goes away, right? And it gets replaced with these new points in time. So for my kids, and I learned this when my father died, like he was a hard man. He was just such a pain in the ass, and he was just so violent. And then towards the end of his life, our relationship got really good, and I miss him dearly. And, and I want to know everything about him and stuff. So the difference between my dad and me is that I have all of these crazy fucking stories, one straight edge gangs, and, all this shit that we talked about today, right? And so this Burning Fight book is so interesting to me because when I read it, I kind of come off as kind of like a villain in some way. It's like straight edge was doing this, and you got Rob Fish or whoever talking about how amazing they are because they were straight edge, and then I come in and I'm like, fuck those guys, right? To me, I feel like even though the digital stuff is there, it's the print is really what's going to stand the test of time. So I think that when this is all over, I think that one of the greatest points that people will probably remember Coalesce or whatever is either through the vinyl records or through the print media, right? Because it's physical. I just think it's really interesting because I would have wanted my dad to tell me some of his stories. He had amazing stories. He was part of an experimental government program, you know what I mean? And he got one of the first iterations of napalm on him. And the government paid for fucking anything he wanted the rest of his life. They didn't even question it. But I couldn't get those stories out of him. He didn't want to share them. And so, and he's very private, and, he wasn't in a band. He didn't have any of this stuff, for the world to make judgments on him like, somebody who is in a public band, can, in interviews, etc. I just thought it was I'm just really glad that book exists because it's like, I think that, and not even for the world, but just for my kids, honestly. Very selfishly, I'm glad it exists very specifically so that my kids will, when I'm dead and gone and, the trust disperses stuff, that they can just read my own thoughts that I didn't share with them personally about like all of this kind of crazy stuff. If they give a shit about the music scene back in the 90s or 2000s. But that's just, I think that's probably the only unique thing I can think of that hasn't been shared.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even realize that Revelation had all these books on their website. There's this whole section with that book and all this other stuff. That's really cool. Holy shit.
And to me, it really that's the manifestation of people realizing that they are in a race against time to establish their version of history. I don't think that all of the version of history in that book is very accurate, especially from my experience with like really dangerous yogis on tour and all this other stuff that like Krishna consciousness allowed in the hardcore scene. So like, it's just, to me, it's just like the straight edge thing we're talking about. The gangs are largely forgotten, but you told me the story to people who were there, like, yeah, this was real. Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's the same as currently the same thing is happening in skateboarding too. It's like they're trying to establish like what videos did this, who invented this trick for posterity. It's the same, and I think largely that's a human trait that wants to do that, but yeah, it's definitely fascinating to watch in real time.
Dude, I fucking love this interview. I'm so glad you said yeah. I've just enjoyed this so much. Like from the beginning, I've just been smiling this whole time. Like this is just
I was afraid I was boring you to death.
no, man. No, I just stay quiet because in the beginning I would talk over people, and then I realized that this whole thing is nothing about this is about me. It's about the people I talk to. So I just try to shut the fuck up. So I'm just sitting here like looking out my window, like looking around my room, just like smiling, like holy shit, this is so cool hearing this stuff. So I just want to make sure you knew that.
So glad you have a good time. Me too.
All right, so last two questions before I ask the last one. What would you like to plug? It could be about you, it could be about a friend, it could be about both.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So as far as like plugging something, I started working on a new musical project. I've mentioned it a couple times when it was made sense in the thing, to reference something. But me and my buddy Josh Barber, he's a producer. He does things for like Devil Wears Prada and Norma Jean, Seven Dusts, all over the place. Pop punk stuff too. Local producer. Me and him just kind of hit it off. A lot of times when I was doing vocal, not features, but whatever, just like adding. I've done like guest spots for Every Time I Die, and I'm on the used record in Love and Something, the one with the heart, and then
Oh wow.
I'm on one of the Every Time I Die records. I'm on one of the point is that
I'm a big deal. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not. The point is this, with the exception of the used, nobody flies me anywhere. They're just like, make it happen. So, I would go and Josh would record these spots for me, so I could send them off to Baloo or whoever. We just became good buddies, and this is over this spot, I'm not doing any music. There's nothing happening. I'm really into prog metal. That's my go-to. Post metal type of stuff, and Josh is too. And so anyways, we just really have been talking about doing a music project together and stuff. And so, and I might have mentioned this at the top of the interview, but like we talked about it for probably 2 years. I had a string of 5 deaths in my family and my close circle. It just got hit with depression, hated my fucking job, even though I created it. I just couldn't do it. Josh wasn't in the same place, but he's just like, hey, I want to do something. I want to feel creative again because all I do is produce other people's records and I just don't get to express myself. And so I think this was the last death. Janet died, who's a friend of mine. And then he called me and I was just in the mood. And I just said, you know what? We need to fucking do this or don't talk to me about it anymore. Like, I just don't. Coalesce wasn't on the horizon. Nothing was on the horizon. He said, okay. And he hung up. And then next thing I know, I get a text from him. He goes, I'm in Spokane. I isolated myself on the ocean. And do you like this song? Is this the direction? And I was like, okay. This clearly motivated him. Fell in love with the songs. And then he just kept going and kept going. So we decided that we were going to write this record and no one was going to hear it at all. And the reason being is because I wanted to sing. I wanted to express some thoughts that maybe I didn't want people to hear. He was on board with that, and everybody was just like, okay, let's just do that. Next thing I know is I get a call from him, and he goes, I got this crazy idea. He goes, I've always wanted to record at the studio in Norway. It's only, it wasn't crazy expensive. He goes, if I buy the plane tickets, can I fly me and the guys that I have hired or picked out, not hired, but like picked out to be a part of this project to Norway, and we'll record that. And this coincided with my last day at work. So I sold my business. I started a merch company 20 something years ago called Merch Table. I sold it last year, almost a year ago this month. My last day was October 31st. And I had just come off of doing the entire merch. Like I headed up the e-com for fucking Boy Genius. Do you know who that is? Like the biggest band in the entire goddamn world.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have 2 great managers and they have 1 manager that was just melting my brain. And so we just come off of that. I'm just mentally like completely done. I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing with my life. I'm literally just throwing myself to the wind. And so on October 31st is our last day, and 5 days later we flew to Norway and recorded this record. And it's on the North Sea. It was just the most incredible experience. And so like every record I've ever done in the past has been go to work and then record because you don't have money, right? And so this wasn't like that. And it wasn't like we spent a lot of money. It was the time that was more expensive than the money. And so we just isolated for like 2.5 weeks or something like that. And like, dude, we were able to just create magic. It's just kind of all over the place. It's not a Coalesce record by any way, shape, or form. We just kind of fell in love with it. And the more that other people kind of got heard it, we just kind of softened on if we wanted to release it. So then the idea was like, well, maybe we just put it on Bandcamp, right? And whatever. And then my friends who run Relapse heard it. And then they're just like, holy shit, we want to put this thing out. And so they are. So this other totally different project that has nothing to do with Coalesce is going to be coming out on Relapse. It was just such a bizarre way it's like such a different way of going about something than Coalesce, because, and I say this all the time in interviews, I learned this from a buddy of mine who's a realtor, but like action always begets action, right? I am neck deep in this project, Idle Airs, that we're putting a lot of work into now, to get ready to release and stuff. And then Coalesce pops up last minute, like out of nowhere, like literally at Christmas, it just pops up. And I've been working on Idle Airs for like 2 years and stuff. So I would say, I don't know if I'm plugging it so much as I just want to share that the most important thing in my life is to be creative. And I don't mean be creative and excel to make money for somebody. I don't mean be creative to do a cool shirt design to make money. I mean to be creative for yourself. I know it doesn't sound like because I do these interviews, but like I'm very introverted. Like I live out in the country. I don't want to fucking talk to my neighbors. I don't give a shit. I just want to be left alone. I have to recharge because it's so hard for me to talk one-to-one, small talk, work, et cetera, et cetera. But what I really discovered over this past year as I'm, understanding myself more, so I know how to like navigate my life without, bankrupting my family, or whatever, is that my personality has always been to figure out how to sell something and figure out how to prepare something to sell it. In that drive, I totally forgot how to just create something for myself, and something that doesn't have anyone's feedback other than the people who are invited into that circle. And that is what it's like with Coalesce for sure. But it's different when it's just you and another person putting it together, because there's a lot more pressure on me. But there's also this freedom of being able to go through and change things. Like I don't like the way that these syllables go with each other. Something I never did with Coalesce, right? Now I have all this extra perspective. And what you mentioned earlier is like, how much of the Dillinger did you take? Well, I didn't take anything from Dillinger. I guarantee I'll be taking this Idle Air stuff to Coalesce and back, because they're two different things that have to exist in two different spaces, but somehow have the same voice. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I would say this: if someone likes my voice and is not sick of me already after 2 hours and 48 minutes of listening to this or whatever it is, I have another project that we put an incredible amount of love, admiration into, that is going to be in the world as well soon.
So it's Idle Airs, like AIRS or HEIRS?
HEIRS.
Oh, okay. And so there's nothing out there until Relapse puts it out?
Yeah. Isn't that weird? It's very bizarre. It's a very bizarre way that it happened, because, and Josh is more modern than I am, which is great. I think that he draws from like my earnestness and the way that I write, and then I draw from like his understanding modern music and finding something that fits for us and stuff. So like that is what's really interesting. It's just been an incredible experience, and now we've already dove into visual. we have like a professional video that we worked on, and then we have 2 more videos that we're working on. So there'll be this whole visual aspect of it. And Coalesce has never done a video. It's really interesting. And also it's like, this isn't a band that opens for Coalesce. This is something that we'll keep totally away from each other, because it's like, it's bad enough that people, when they hear the voice and they make that connection, it'll be really disappointing to read, this isn't Coalesce, right? It's like, well, no shit. But I think playing together, it's got to exist in its own world. But like, it's been my great pleasure to be a part of this. And like, it's so exciting. I'm in that Zen moment. And I know you said you did bands too, but like, when your record's done and you have it in your pocket, and only like 10 other people have it, and that's not out yet, and like you have the secret, right? You're going to share it with the world, and that's fun too. I'm in that Zen moment where I love this thing, my heart and soul's in this thing, and it's still mine. It's still not out. I feel like that's really why bands don't like it when their albums are leaked, because it's like, I wanted to share my record. Why are you sharing my record? I made this. It seems like the leaking is less prevalent than it was since Converge put the name of the guy on the disc and hid the file. Remember that?
No, I don't remember this.
I think it was Axe to Fall, but they gave out files and they hid who the person was in the file, and then they waited to leak, and then they grabbed the file and they were able to go in and find the file.
Oh, that's genius. I never heard that.
Yeah, those guys rule, dude. So,
So
yeah,
cool.
I don't know. Probably has nothing to do with why things don't leak. To me, I'm lazy. It's like, if it's not on Apple or Spotify, you know what? I'll wait.
Last question. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
Oh,
Which I'm interested to hear what you're going to say.
yeah. So ethics, right? So, I mean, I'm still a huge fan of DIY, honestly. I mean, if that's what if you would consider that. So, I mean, it's just who I am. I'm an entrepreneur. If I see somebody doing something, we have a local show that we're working on, and I mean, I put it together, and they let me do the marketing, and I just do that whole DIY thing. I mean, some things you have to hire out, right? Like for me, a booking agent has to be hired out. That's just going to cause too many issues in the band, right? You know what I mean? You just let somebody help you, guide you as a third party, because that perspective you don't have. But like, I'm just like a huge fan of just saying fuck it and doing it yourself. I did that with merch. I did that with records. I did that with skateboarding. I did that with, everything. So like, to me, I don't know if the younger kids have that as much, or if it's as prevalent. I just feel like everybody did their own stuff back in the 90s when we were doing stuff. I don't know if the tech age or the technology or whatever has changed that, but I don't, and maybe it's just my kids, who I have access to, and I'm helping. But like, I'm just kind of noticing that kids drive cars later. Kids are like, well, I can't do that. So I don't know how to play guitar right away. So maybe I'm not meant to be a guitarist or whatever. So I don't know. I'm always telling my kids look, you have to fight to do this stuff. I don't know how to put out a fucking 7-inch record. I just asked a million stupid questions. And then when someone asked me a million stupid questions, I shared that information. I asked somebody how to screen print a t-shirt, and then I got speedball myself and ruined my basement and some chairs of my mom's figuring it out. To me, I feel like that particular ethic is like, it's so important, right? I mean, it's just like, it's like nothing, no one is going to do it for you. So, and I just feel like there's this extra, it's just something extra special, when you see like say Iodine Records, right? Their stuff always speaks to me. It's so cool. Or like real small labels where they're just like still hand silk screening stuff, and it's just rad. It's just this whole extra personality and love in it. It's like the difference between a home cooked meal versus McDonald's. I just love everything about it, and I feel like that all comes from DIY.